Good afternoon. Welcome to the Kendal Lexington Resident Speaker Panel Series via Zoom. I'm Kevan Kavanaugh, host of today's session on sustainability. In today's event, we'll hear from a panel of residents and staff sustainability supporters who will share their insights and expertise on various sustainability topics. Before we dive in, let's take a moment to meet our panelists. I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves. Bob, would you please get us started by introducing yourself and giving us a brief synopsis of your role in sustainability efforts here at Kendal? Is Bob muted?
Sorry, let me start over again then. My name is Bob Gettings. My wife and I moved to Kendal at Lexington about 4 years ago. I currently serve as the convener of the Resident Sustainability Committee, which means I'm what you might think of as the chairperson of the committee. That means I develop the agenda. I invite people to be on the agenda and talk, and I prepare background materials, etc. So that's essentially the kind of traditional role. I just wanted to say, by the way, that the notion of a convener is a reflection of Kendal's Quaker values, Quaker-based values, which means we work to achieve consensus rather than majority rule approach. So that's why we use convener. So that's it.
Thank you, Bob. We'll get back to you with some questions in a moment, but let's meet the rest of our panel. So Todd, would you now please introduce yourself and give a quick synopsis of your role in sustainability here at Kendal?
Hi, everybody. My name is Todd Pegg. I'm the Director of Facility Services. I've been at KaLex about 11 months. In that role, I really do two things. First is the day-to-day operations, which of course have some sustainability implications. But the second part is I really serve as the project manager for any large contractor or capital or other significant projects, which of course I think we'll talk about later this afternoon. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Todd. All right, Anita, would you please introduce yourself and give a brief synopsis of your role in sustainability efforts here at Kendal?
Good afternoon. My name is Anita James. I have lived at Kendal for 3.5 years now. I became interested in the Sustainability Committee before moving here by reading the newsletter Connections, and so have belonged to the Sustainability Committee since arriving on campus. I am the past convener just before Bob, and my current role is primarily sort of overseeing the Trex plastic recycling program.
Great. Looking forward to hearing more about that in a couple of minutes. All right, Robin, you're up next for a quick intro of yourself and your role in Kendal sustainability efforts.
Hi, I'm Robin Potter. I have been a resident for almost 8 years. My husband and I live on Sycamore Lane, and I have a long time interest in sustainability issues. I have been on the committee for 6 or 7 years, and I am a past convener also.
Very good. Thank you, Robin. And Bill, would you please introduce yourself now and give a brief synopsis of your role in sustainability efforts here at Kendal? Is Bill muted?
My name is Bill Shelstead. My wife and I came down here from Northern Virginia about 7 years ago. From that time, I've been active in sustainability and the various activities that we've had in that general area of the environment. I've dialed back my activities there somewhat, but am still an interested member of Sustainability Committee.
Very good. Thank you, Bill. And thanks to all of our panelists for those introductions and for agreeing to join this panel today. With the wealth of knowledge and experience that you all bring, could be an interesting discussion today. As always, we will leave time at the end for questions from our audience. And as Erica told you at the beginning, you can pose those questions during today's session by typing them into the chat function near the bottom of your screen. So let's move on to our first topic, which is sustainability practices at Kendal at Lexington. Bob Gettings, you're up first. Can you tell us what steps Kendal at Lexington has taken to reduce its carbon footprint and to promote renewable energy sources and cost reduction?
Unmuting myself first. Before we discuss the specifics of what sustainability is, I wanted to point out for those of you who aren't that familiar with Kendal communities that sustainability here is one of 14 standing committees. And that reflects the fact that Kendal communities emphasize resident involvement in all aspects of community activity. Unlike many other continuing care and assisted living communities that have activities directors, et cetera, we here have residents who are involved in every aspect of carrying out activities. So that's important to note. And I think it's also important to note that as we pursue our committee activities, we work closely with professional staff to try to define what we as residents want and what can be done practically within the budgeted time. In the case of sustainability, we work very closely with Todd Pegg as the Director of Facilities. And for example, I will meet with Todd before each of our meetings and we'll talk about what's going to be on the agenda, and I'll get his thoughts on what's going on and I'll share with him my thoughts and so forth. I think Todd attends all our meetings and he always provides a report and an update on what's going on within the maintenance department. So all that's helpful, but I wanted to emphasize at the start the interactive nature of how we pursue sustainability. Now on to what sustainability is doing. This year, 2023, we began by emphasizing energy conservation as a major activity. It hasn't been a point of emphasis with the Sustainability Committee in the past, but I wanted to point out to you two of the reasons for that. Commercial and residential buildings are the source of about 13% of all greenhouse gas emissions in the country. They're almost equal to the emissions from transportation. So we hear a lot about EV vehicles, but buildings are a major source of carbon emissions and other kinds of greenhouse gases. And here at Kendal, we have, of course, a lot of buildings with conditioned heating and space, 70 buildings of about 280,000 square feet. So we need to emphasize conservation in the use of electricity and gas and water in the buildings. At present, we have three activities that we've been engaged in since the first of the year. One is a program that I won't get into details on, but it's called a peak use reduction program. And what we're attempting to do is to pick those places where we have highest demand for electricity, which is usually the hottest summer days, and limit the growth during those summer days by encouraging people to turn down or turn off their thermostats during peak periods of the day. The net effect of that is we reduce the payments we make as a commercial provider to our electric utility, which is Dominion Energy. The second initiative is one where we're trying to expand the use of LED light bulbs. So we're encouraging residents to replace their incandescent bulbs with LED bulbs, which are about 8 times as energy efficient. So the savings in electricity more than offsets the cost. And the third activity is a series we've started in our monthly newsletter, Connections, which we launched earlier this year, which is we call Conservation Tips. It's kind of straightforward advice to local households of what they can do to save water, save electricity, and save gas. So that's another one of our ongoing activities. We have other activities that we're going to pursue in the future, but I think that gives you a kind of a quick sense of where we are. I just want to say that I just wanted to mention the fact that those 14 committees, it sounds overwhelming, and it is true, but we do work together on a bunch of activities. So I personally, for example, in addition to being on Sustainability Committee, work on the Newsletter Committee, and I write articles about energy conservation and other related kinds of activities, as does Anita, as does Robin. So we have a presence in terms of reaching out to the rest of the community. The second thing that I'm involved in is a group which we can't get into the details. It's called Kendal College. It's a long-standing tradition. As you know, we're a college town, and we work with the two local universities to present programs to our provisions. We just did one last month on climate change, a 3-lecture series on what Washington and Lee University has done to lower their carbon emissions and promote sustainability on campus. So I'll leave it there, Kevin.
Very good. Bob, I think you've answered all of the follow-up questions that I was going to ask. So I'll just ask, is there anything else, any other points you wanted to make before I move on to our next presenter?
No, I would just say that the issue of improving sustainability on campus is a long-range activity. It's not going to be done overnight, and so we need to think about it. So one of the things that we have an opportunity to do here as residents is provide input to the capital budget for the upcoming year, and that time is coming up very soon. And one of the things we're going to be proposing as part of the capital budget is a comprehensive campus-wide energy audit to pinpoint the areas where we're losing energy because of heat loss and cooling loss. And so that's one of the future initiatives we're going to have underway. The only other thing I'd say is that, I know that everybody's interested, and I'm sure the conversation will turn to what are we doing about installing solar panels? Well, that's a complex issue, and I'll let Todd talk in more detail about that, except that I'll just throw in this point. You don't talk to any building engineer that won't say, first of all, you secure the building envelope, you prevent loss of energy before you think about introducing alternative sources of energy, including possible solar energy. So anyway, I'll leave it at that.
All right, Bob, thank you so much. It's exciting to see the commitment that Kendal, Lexington, and its residents have made toward sustainability. We're going to hear more about that as the discussion continues. Let's shift gears now and discuss renewable energy and solar panels. We have a lot of interest in this topic from our community members. So we are going to turn now to Todd Pegg, the Director of Operations. And Todd, my first question for you is, has Kendal at Lexington considered installing solar panels to generate renewable energy? And if so, what factors are being considered during the decision-making process?
That's a good question. And like Bob mentioned, and you as well, I get asked about solar on a very regular basis. The short answer is yes, we absolutely have done some significant work in the consideration and evaluation part of the process. And I think it's safe to say that there is the intention to do that, but we want to do it right. And I'll tell you, from the engineering perspective, there's really 3 things when you want to look at a properly designed, properly installed solar setup. The first is the orientation, right? Your solar panel in the right direction. So when you look around the property of our 84 acres or so, you see some of our buildings, some of our locations are not, but we have some that are. So we still have a possible way forward looking at the right orientation on some of our structures. The second one is actually their siting and location relative to your meter. Kendal at Lexington has one master electric meter. We don't have individual meters out at every cottage or anything like that. We have one master meter, a main mechanical room in Anderson in our main building. So a properly oriented cottage that's a half mile away from that meter is of limited use to us in terms of installing solar that will work efficiently, put its energy where we need it to be, and have a good performance and good payback. But there are a lot of things close to that master meter, including the main building at Anderson and north and south wings and things like that. Lots of roofs there with the proper orientation and are close to the master meter, which makes it a great location. Which brings up the third and final criteria is really the age and condition of the roof. What you don't want to do is put in an expensive, well-designed solar system on a roof that you have to re-roof 2 years down the road. The wear and tear on that infrastructure is significant. The labor costs and things like that end up eating into the project numbers significantly. Plus, it just makes me nervous when you put in glass and silicone and aluminum up on a roof, and then you're going to tell another contractor, I need you to unhook all this stuff, not break it, and then put it back exactly the same way. That makes me a little nervous. So those three things are kind of the three hoops you have to jump through to get a well-designed project that's going to work for you. That being said, this year, 2023, we're putting on over 100,000 square feet of new roofs. So that will yield us sites in the very near future that have the proper orientation, are close to our master meter and infrastructure where we need them to be, and have brand new roofs that we can get 20, 30, 40 years out of without having to go back and do re-roofing again. So a window of opportunity, I think, is opening soon for us to move forward with that and move forward with it smartly.
So based on that plan to put on all of those new roofs, what would you say, I know it's an estimate at this point, but what would you say the timeline might be then for actual implementation of solar panels here at Kendal?
I think it ties back into what Bob mentioned before. We want to put on new roofs. We want to make sure our insulation and our building envelope issues are where we want them to be, because conservation is always a good, important first step before you actually start talking generation. I think we're probably a couple years. Is it going to be 6 months from now? I don't think so. There's a lot of things coming into play with that. We have some improvements we can do that'll improve our infrastructure, make us more energy efficient, and then a smaller or more efficient solar system can partner with that, and it becomes a win-win scenario. I think we'll be looking at doing some studies and designs likely in the 2024 capital budget. I'm going to recommend some of those go forward. And then I would think in the year after that would very likely be a high chance of an execution year for a pretty major solar project.
That's exciting. How, and it may be premature to ask this question because a lot of studies haven't been done yet, but how would the installation of solar panels impact the energy consumption and the utility bills of the residents and the overall community here?
It really will vary depending on which way we go forward. We have already brought 3 different firms in to look at our site, look at the types of systems that could go here. And those sites ranged from I gotta look at my notes here, about a 1.3 megawatt ground mount system, huge field of solar panels, to about a 250 kilowatt roof central system, to companies that do the small 10, 12, 14 kilowatt systems on a private residence. We've looked at all 3 of those from different firms to see what makes the most sense. I think the middle one is probably where we'll end up going. A roof mount in the couple 100 kilowatt size is probably going to fit those 3 criteria I already talked about. If that happens right now, we peak out between 500 and 800 kilowatts a month. If we're putting up a 250, I crunched the numbers, that's a little under 30,000 kilowatt hours in a month. We average about 300,000 in a month. So easily in the 10% range to knock right off the top. And the most important part of that is actually our peaking reduction, which ties into what Bob mentioned as well. It's not just the total quantity, how much energy you use or how much energy you avoid using, it's the manner in which you do it. A super hot day when all the utilities are maxed out, they are often forced to bring on a lot of their older, less efficient, non-green energy generators just to meet that peak demand. Well, our peak summer air conditioning loads tend to come on our sunny, high solar energy incoming days when a solar not only produces, X amount of energy for you, but it's producing it for you right at the time when you need it, and you're seeing a lot of peak energy demand. So if I had to guess, I think a couple 100 kilowatts on a centralized roof mount, Anderson, north, south, in those area, is probably a good fit for what we see. But I'll be honest, I look forward to working with some of the subject matter experts in those firms to crunch numbers and see what the big brains tell us is the right answer. We've had a couple of those conversations already. I think we're going to get some good answers back when we start moving down that road.
We hear sometimes about potential financial incentives or tax rebates for individual homeowners that might be out there for installing solar panels. Is there anything like that that would apply for a community like Kendal at Lexington?
As a not-for-profit, previously, we were not in the game for the incentives, for the rebates, or things like that. The Inflation Reduction Act that was passed recently does have provisions in there for the first time to open up some of those supports to not-for-profits. So yes, I think those are going to be in there. The law doesn't specify a whole lot of what they are. That is up to the enacting federal agencies to write those. Those are being written right now. And Kendal Corporation actually has a team working very closely monitoring that, and we have input and participate with that to watch and monitor that process. And when the legislation leads to the regulations, when those regulations come out, to have a team of us who look at that and go, okay, these are the things now where they do rebates. They've even mentioned direct grants to help underwrite some of these projects as well. That has never been the case before for not-for-profits. So yes, I think we're going to be able to tap into some of those in the near future, which links up time-wise pretty well with when I think KaLex will be ready to do some of this.
Great. I don't know that I have any other follow-up questions at this point, Todd, other than this. Is there anything else that you think would be of interest today for either our prospects who have tuned in today or any of our residents who have tuned in? Anything else you want them to know about what we're doing in the pursuit of renewable energy?
I think it ties into what Bob mentioned earlier. It is a long-range project, and every day we're trying to work on efficiency and conservation to make a project we do down the road link up well and be the most efficient it can. We've already seen a lot of good energy consumption improvements in both electricity and natural gas. To the Sustainability Committee earlier this week, I brought some of my recent tracking data. And when you look at the graph and see the nice downward line, I'm like, this is great. We're hitting out some of those prerequisites, and hopefully can take advantage of some of the generation, solar stuff down the road. I think we're moving in the right direction.
Todd, thank you very much for joining the panel today. It's encouraging to see the potential for renewable energy within our community here at Kendal.
Great, thanks.
Moving forward, let's explore the topic of sustainable lifestyles and resident engagement. How can we encourage sustainable practices among our residents and promote a culture of environmental responsibility? Anita and Robin, you have each taken a real interest in that side of things. Anita, I'm going to start with you. Would you please tell us about TREX?
TREX is a company headquartered in Winchester, Virginia, that makes sustainable planking and outdoor furniture. So a lot of decking is made with TREX. They do absolutely beautiful work. And no, I'm not a paid representative for TREX at all. A little over 2 years ago, in February of 21, one of the Sustainability Committee members, Sandra Stewart, sent me an email and said, here's a program, do you want to take a look at it? And so I went online, and yes, Bill, it's thundering outside. I went online with TREX and looked at a program, and they offered two different programs. One of them is designed for K-12, and that is more restricted time-wise because of an academic school year. The other is for community and university participation. Obviously, that applied to us as a community, not as a university. And so I did some reading. I brought the idea to the Sustainability Committee. And as Bob said, we work on consensus. And the consensus at that time was not a snowflake's chance of us being able to do what was required. And what is required is you designate a 6-month period. And in that 6-month period, you must collect a minimum of 500 pounds of plastic film. Now, plastic film involves everything from those plastic grocery bags that everybody thinks of, but it also includes the plastic film that comes around your newspaper if it gets tossed onto your front porch, the plastic film that comes over your dry cleaning or laundry when you're picking it up. It's the plastic film that, in a little firmer form, is around drink packages. So your V8 juice, when you get an 8-pack of it. I won't use water as an example because we're trying to get people to stop using single-use plastics, but the wrap on it does qualify. So do ice bags, so do Ziploc bags. Of course, all of this must be clean. Trex is not in the market for washing everything out when it arrives at their plants. So anyway, when I explained this at the March Sustainability Committee meeting in 21, the response was, no way possible can we do this. We can't do it. So in April, I brought it back as a possible idea. And finally in May, with a couple of key people on the committee, opinion leaders is what they are, who said, maybe with the right education program, we could do this. So we did what we called a soft rollout at the beginning, well, in the middle of May, and began our first collection June 1st of 2021. Now, what Trex offers is not just a one-way deal. We collect a minimum of 500 pounds of plastic film. We take it to a local partner, which in our case here in Lexington, I chose Food Lion grocery store. Representatives of Trex pick it up. They take it up there. Some money changes hands somehow, and I'm not involved with that part of it at all. That's the business part from the corporation. In return, for every 500 pounds that we document and record, we get a 48-inch yacht club bench made of Trex sustainable materials. We can choose colors. Again, the consensus of the committee at the time was that we would order our benches in green because that is reflective both of the colors of green and white in the Kendal at Lexington logo, and green, of course, for sustainability. So when you visit campus, or if you've already been on campus and you've noticed, there are lots of brown benches and Adirondack type chairs. Those were purchased as part of our phase 3 expansion, but you will also see a few green benches, and those come from the Trex program. One of the questions is, how many do we have and what happens? Well, I'll tell you what we did. We completed our first 500 pounds in slightly less than 6 months. We started our second program, our second 6-month period, and completed that in 4.5 months. With Trex, when you commit for a 6-month period, you can't start earlier. So in order to maximize our opportunities, I created a second organization. And that's completely legal. I talked with the folks at Trex before I did it. There are some requirements, a different email address and a different phone number, but many of us have more than one email address anyway. So I started one so that it would overlap, and that one we finished in about 3 months. All told, in a 2-year period, instead of being able to have 4 benches, we earned 6. Bench number 6 is sitting in a box on my porch right now, ready to be assembled, and we are working on bench number 7. In that period of time, even though it's a very small number, well, a very big number, but small overall, we have diverted from the Rockbridge County landfill almost 2 tons of plastic film. It's a small number. The treasurer of the Rockbridge landfill told me, that they get like 100 times that much. But the point is, it is a program where people on campus are involved. So what does that mean? It means that we have 5 containers around campus, and residents deposit their plastic film in one or another of those containers. I keep a watch on them, I empty them, I weigh the plastic, and I drive it over to Food Lion. I keep a spreadsheet. Todd's not the only one who does numbers and spreadsheets, and track how many days I used for transportation, how many bags we deposited, and the ultimate number of pounds. I try to keep it to just a few over 500. No sense giving them more than we need in order to get a bench. But one of the things that has been most interesting, or 2 things. One, the number of people at KaLex who have really gotten involved. And I'm not sure what some of us would do if we now had to put it in the trash instead of be able to put it in a Trex bench bag or container. The second thing is, through word of mouth and organizations I belong to in the community, we've gotten help from outside. So the Rockbridge Area Relief Association, which provides food boxes to families, now has a volunteer who 1 day a week comes in and sorts through all of their plastic film, makes sure it's clean and labels are taken off and other paper, and she collects that and then has me pick it up. The post office here in Lexington also has a person who, up until recently, has brought me shrink wrap from the big pallets that mail comes in, and particularly magazines and other kinds of boxes and things, and has brought it to me. In fact, in December of 22, she brought almost 300 pounds of plastic shrink wrap to my house. Thank you, Sarah Giddings, for her garage, because otherwise I would have had no place to put it. Consequently, one of the early commitments on the committee back in 21 when we began was, I'm trying to keep track of time, Kevin, was that when we had placed a number of benches around campus, we would look at other nonprofits who might have a use for a bench. Right now, I'm waiting for word from the Ethics Committee of the United States Postal Service as to whether or not the US Post Office can accept a bench because of all the plastic film that they've given us. The second place, if I don't hear soon from our postmaster here, will go to RARA, to the Relief Association. When people pick up their food boxes, there is no place for them to sit outside their cars. So you have this big building, you have cars lined up. If it's hot weather, people don't necessarily want to stay in their cars, and there is literally no place to sit except on the concrete ground. So one bench will go over there again because of their support. So we have 5 benches currently on campus, 1 that might go to the post office or RARA. Depending on where it goes, bench number 7 will go to the other. So post office or RARA. The project is relatively easy for people to participate in, and yet there is a visible, clear, physical outcome for it. And so I think it's been terrific. And let me just say as an ending, I will put in the chat box the address for Trex in case some of you off campus are interested in taking a look at that for organizations to which you belong. And there are two different things on the SAFE website, and SAFE is SSAFE. Bob is on the board, and it means Senior Stewards Acting for the Environment. And the link will take you to the first newsletter that had a long article about Trex. Because of the Kendals, we were the first one. There are now 3 or 4 other Kendals who are also doing the same thing. And so that's really exciting. It's an idea that has spread. And the second thing that you can read is a case study about the Trex project here. So if you wanted to pursue it, I'll put it on after I am quiet again. Kevin?
Anita, thank you so much. What a great program. That's really exciting. Thank you for sharing it. And I'm sure we'll be getting phone calls and emails from folks wanting to know more about how they can contact Trex to get that started, as you said, for their organization. Well, let's move on now to Robin, another member of that Sustainability Committee, who can tell us about efforts here to recycle paper and other consumer products, as well as cut down on the use of single-use plastics. Robin, it's your turn.
Okay. Many of you have visited the campus and perhaps you've seen the trash rooms that we have in the main building. Those are used, they're organized with racks and bins for recycling of various materials. We're very constrained by city and county restrictions. So, and those are changing often, but we do what we can. For the folks in cottages, we recycle with bins that the Todd's folks pick up with the trash. We recycle other plastics. We can only recycle at this point numbers 1 and 2 that have a top that's smaller than the bottom. Don't ask why. None of us can figure that out, and nobody can explain it. But anyway, that's the restriction that we're under. We recycle paper. Obviously, all of this has to be clean. In the paper bins, we can also put cardboard. Corrugated cardboard can also be recycled. We just put it on top or beside the bin for the paper. We recycle metal, that would be tin cans. And of course, we also recycle glass. These things are picked up, taken to the county transfer station and distributed from there. We also, if you know the alcove is a little room that's basically a little office room with a printer and things that those of us on committees and have to do office work use most frequently. But in there, we also have storage space for small bins. We have a bin for one-sided paper that people put in, that those of us who work on committees and need some extra printing paper for junk work can use, or you can cut it up and make little notes on it, whatever. There's a bin for batteries, ink cartridges, which one of our residents has taken on a project of returning ink cartridges to Staples in I think he goes to Stanton, and he gets credit that can be used to buy recycled paper for the printer in the alcove. We also can now recycle electronics, which I guess Todd is considered anything with a plug. Computers and telephones, Todd?
Yes, the plug-in desktop stuff we can take as well to that e-cycling.
Okay, and other electronics. We recycle eyeglasses. I don't know who does that, but I assume they go to the Lions Club. And we also recycle old running shoes. The ones that you think nobody would ever want, go to a local running store and they're passed on, ground up, and somebody makes flooring, matting for kids' playrooms and athletic fields, that sort of thing. We also, in cooperation with the nursing staff, can turn in unused and expired drugs so that they don't get into the water system, etc. We keep our eye out for the local hazardous waste pickups, and we encourage folks to bring old paint cans, etc., to that. And then, in cooperation with horticulture, we, as you all know, we went through the phase 3 construction, which left our beautiful campus in kind of a mess. And we're trying to bring it back better and in a much more sustainable fashion. So we are looking at decreasing the mowing that needs to be done on campus, and that's put in place for this year. It can be adjusted at any time, but that seems to be working out well. We're looking to, in the unmown areas, plant native grasses and wildflowers. A team of folks has also worked out a really nice trail system that goes all the way around the campus and connects to another local trail that can be used obviously for recreation, and we hope to develop it more as an educational thing for folks too, with signage. That has not been done yet, but that will be done. And I think that's about it. We also have a trash pickup team that goes out twice a year and picks up the trash that gets thrown all over the road on Enfield Road, which is right outside of Kendal. We have a 2-mile stretch of Enfield Road that we attempt to clean up twice a year. And I think that's about it.
Sure, Robin, thank you very much. It's really, these are fantastic ideas for engaging our residents. I personally am very impressed with the alcove that you mentioned and all of the different bins, which, by the way, some staff members contribute to those things too. I love the fact that there's a place where I can bring old printer cartridges and old shoes and old eyeglasses. I mean, we've got a recycling plan for just about everything you can think of, and that's amazing. Well, let's move on to our last topic for today, future sustainability initiatives. What plans and goals does Kendal at Lexington have in mind for future sustainability projects? Now, Bill, you were tasked with chairing the board's project group focused on sustainability when they were building the current 5-year strategic plan. We're kind of in the middle of it. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, in order to look at the future, I did go back to the earlier exercise on the strategic plan and then compared that review with a look at Anita's minutes from this last meeting of the Sustainability Committee. And I was surprised, frankly. By the way, it's hailing now. I hope my window doesn't go out. But it was remarkable to me that our current activities in the Sustainability Committee reflect to some degree, to a remarkable degree, the planning that we did earlier on. Almost, I guess it's been 4 years now, including all the way of recommending solar panels on the rooftops, although we had much less reason to make that recommendation, I think, than Todd and his people will do. But we weren't far off. Some of the things that we mentioned in the plan had either, and I should point out that the relationship between mentioning something in the plan and our actually doing it is hazy, shall we say. I'm not sure anybody's doing anything because it's written in the plan, or whether somebody somewhere got inspiration from the plan and started doing something. I rather think the latter case is more rare than the former. But we broke the thing down pretty much the way we've had discussions here into energy and water and trash. And then especially we had a brief session on collaboration between management or administration and staff, specifically the Sustainability Committee. And I think that has turned into something especially valuable here at KaLex. Again, and I'm not sure how much that has arisen out of our mentioning it in the plan or whether it was more spontaneous. But in any event, the relationship between even the board and management here is really apparent, and for the most part, I should think quite productive, fruitful. We even said in the plan that the board should consider the Sustainability Committee as a resource for new ideas, new markets, new costing, and so forth that come up in the environmental field. And I think to a certain degree that's happening. To the credit of the board, I think the board is paying more attention to the residents than they were previously. I always said I got to be the head of that sustainability part of the strategic plan simply because nobody on the board would do it. I still think that's probably true, but we'll call it apocryphal. But involving the residents, I think in this whole discussion, our audience would have gathered the extent to which residents are directly involved in this area, and to the degree of their own interest and capabilities. Both Robin and Anita talked extensively about how people get involved. I like to think that being careful with the disposition of plastic film makes one a little more amenable to the other kinds of things that we'd like our residents to do with regard to energy. And I think that probably is true. Another part of the discussion has highlighted and will be part of any future planning, I think, is the relationship that we've developed with SAFE. As Anita mentioned, SAFE grew up kind of in an ad hoc way with, I think to begin with, we had 4 or 5 affiliates, and that's grown to 12 of the Kendal affiliates as members of SAFE, all pointed toward doing things and advocating things with relationship to to climate change, shall we say. And the relationship with SAFE, I think, is still a bit new, but it's already giving out some real benefits. One of them, for example, was mentioned in the minutes to the last Sustainability Committee, was the use of one of the affiliates of the template or example of a RFP for energy audits that was developed by a subgroup, a working group of people from SAFE and from different affiliates. There's several things going on in that vein, and in particular, I think there's a lot of interchange on things that the affiliates could or should become involved with in terms of advocacy, writing letters and signing on to petitions and appeals to the powers that be. I think it's a richer exercise because we're part of a larger organization. Well, that's not a very clear agenda for a planning committee for the next strategic plan, but it's some of the thoughts that occurred to me. Thank you.
All right, Bill, thank you very much. Thanks to all of our panelists for sharing your knowledge and expertise. We've covered a wide range of sustainability topics today, and it's inspiring. Well, before we wrap up, we did want to address if we have any questions from our audience. The last time I looked in the chat box, I did not see any questions submitted, but it's not too late. Audience members, if you have a question, go to your chat and type in what your question is. And Erica or Katie, if you notice a question in the chat, please let me know.
Speeds of thunder and all of that power.
In the meantime, I just want to give our entire panel the opportunity, if any of you have some thought has suddenly occurred to you, I wish I had said that. We've got just a couple of minutes left if anybody has any additional thoughts. Well, I guess we've covered it all.
Let me
let me just hop on, Kevin, and thank you to all of the panelists, and thank you to Kevin for doing such a wonderful job hosting today. And I really appreciated everyone's participation. So not to cut you off, I apologize, Kevin, but I just wanted to say good job.
Well, thank you very much. And that concludes today's Zoom session from Kendal at Lexington about sustainability. So thanks to all of you for attending and participating. And if Kendal at Lexington sounds like the kind of place you'd like to retire to, please know that we are open for tours and try-it visits. So if you'd like to learn more about scheduling a tour for yourself or even an overnight visit, contact either Katie Hall in our marketing department or myself, Kevan Kavanaugh, here in Kendal. In the meantime, stay safe and do something to make your corner of the world more sustainable. Hope to see you soon someday here at Kendal at Lexington. So long.